Hi guys, this is Macro Man for another VBA beginner series video. This is part 3 and we're looking at sheets and values. Just a quick recap on the last video, we were looking at range and cells, and we set ourselves a learning task to create a macro to enter 1 to 6 using the range function in cells A1 to A6. Create a macro to enter A to F using the cells function in B1 to B6. Draw a button on the sheet, assign the macro to it, and add some line of code to make sure that the data refreshes every time you run it. So if you didn't manage to get there, this is my solution. So I create a macro called range and cells. Let's just run this for you. In the last video we had a bit of an issue with getting the range/cells method to clear out the contents. I'm not sure what happened there. I recreated the workbook and it now works fine, so it must have been some kind of bug. But yeah, when you execute over that line, let me just put some piece of information in there for you. So execute that line and it now works. So anyway, to create or to populate 1 to 6 in range A1 to A6, this is the method you use. So sheet 4 range A1 to A6, execute that one line at a time, as you can see 1 to 6, and that's the range method. To use the cells method for column B, obviously it's 1 to 6, and then the column is 2 for column B, and we wanted A to F. And remember, we have to use speech marks whenever we're entering text, and don't need speech marks if you're entering values. So there we go. I create the button onto the sheet. Right click, assign the macro range and cells to it. So whenever we click the button, there you go. That's all. That's the task completed. So let's move on to sheets and values. So this is kind of an extension of range and cells and the stuff that we covered in the last video. Let's say we wanted to create a macro to populate values in, say, column A and column B in this sheets and values sheet from values in the range and cell sheet. So let's quickly run that macro so the values are there. We'll go back to the sheets and values sheets. Now let's say let's create a new macro and we'll call this populate sheets and values. Okay, so just going over this whole sheet properties thing again. As we discussed, the part that's inside the brackets on your project window for the sheet is the actual name of the sheet that you can see. So in this case we got range and cells, but sheet 4 is the actual code name. Now I tend to make a habit of naming the code part of it like this. I use SHT in lowercase. This is what's called Hungarian notation, and then call it something like range cells. Just something simple that you know what it refers to. As you can see, that coding part of the sheet name has now changed to range cells. So if we wanted to populate, say, range A1 in the sheets and values sheet with values from the, let's just delete that because we've now finished with it. We wanted to populate values from A1 to A6 on this sheet. We would do the following. So sheets values dot range A1 is equal to, now we want to be able to refer to the range cells sheet that we've just created. So sheet range cells dot range A1. So if I execute that line, cell A or range A1 will populate the value that's located in the range cell sheet. So we execute that line by stepping in and pressing F8. So as you can see, it's 1. If I go to this sheet and change that to something else, just to prove that it definitely does work. Drag the line, or drag where it's got the line highlighted. If we drag the little yellow arrow back up to a line that we want to execute and press F8 again, as you can see it now changes to 10. So that's brilliant. So if we copy that and do it for each value in the range, so let's say A2, A3, A4, A5, A6, A2, A3, A4. Actually, let's be a little bit creative and let's move it to a different column at least. There we go. So if I now drag that back up there and rerun it, so what we've got is in column A of the new sheet, we're actually taking the values from column B in the previous sheet. So the A to F is now populated in column A on the new sheet. So that's how we refer to the values like that. So let's do the same, and let's also do it for the cells method. You need to practice this in order to get comfortable with it, and it takes a while to get your head around it all, but once you are comfortable with it, then it'll become a lot easier. So let's use the cells method. So sheets values and then dot cells, and then we want cells row 1 column 1 is equal to, actually we'll use column B now because we've already got some data in column 1 on the sheets value sheet. So row 1 column 2 is equal to sheet range cells dot range A1, because we've already used the data that's in range cells column B, so we're now going to take the data that's in column A just to mix it up a bit. So again, it's always copy and paste wherever you can. So row 1 to 6 column B, and then we're taking it from A1 to A6. 6, there we go. And let's put something in there to again clear out the previous results. So rather than sheet 4, it will now be sheets values, and this will clear out anything that was in it before. So if we press F8, step into the macro we've just written, clear out the previous data and run through line by line, as you can see the sheets value sheet is now populating with the data from the range and cell sheet, and because we've essentially flipped which one we're going to take, it's now putting everything in that column into column B and vice versa. So there we go. As we discussed before, there is also a method of using longhand to refer to a sheet, so let me just go over that again. So let's copy this, paste it in there. Let's call this 2, and let's say rather than doing it like this, you do sheets like this. So let's copy that and put it here. Okay, if we just run through that. Let's just do it for this as well. Okay. Sheets and values. Okay, when you're referring to the part in the brackets, it's how it's explicitly named on the actual tab. So let's change that. 1 second. Make sure we've got everything. Okay, so execute line by line. There we go. It all works. Everything's populated. As I said, I don't make a habit of using this method because if someone comes along and changes the name of the sheet, it would cause the macro not to work anymore. So good practice always, whenever you're creating sheets, if we create a new sheet, for example, in Excel. So for example, this is the sheet we just created that says sheets. I always just go into, click on the sheet, go to the properties window, go to the name at the top, and then do SHT, and then name it something like that. And then whenever, also, you know, put a new name of the sheet, but it's the coding part of the sheet is the most important thing. So if anybody ever comes along, changes the name of the sheet, which they do quite often, then and you refer to, and you've coded all of your macro using the sheet coding method, then nothing will change. Everything will work as normal. So I think we'll leave it there for today. So here's the learning task for sheets and values. Actually, I need to create a sheet for you. Let's call this test. So if we go to the task, so rename the test sheet, which I've just created for you, in properties to sheet test. Create a macro to populate the values in range A1 to A6 on the range and cell sheet to range C1 to C6. Actually, let's call that the test sheet. So take the values from the range and cell sheet and populate into range C1 to C6 on the test sheet using the range method and referring to the sheets using the code name of or the sheet name method. Create a macro to populate the range of values B1 to B6 on the range in cells to range D1 to D6 in the test sheet using the cells method and referring to the sheets using the sheets name of sheets method. Draw a button for each macro and assign the macro to them, or ideally just have one button that runs both parts of that macro. Okay, we'll leave it there for now. Thanks very much, guys. See you in the next video.